I love that.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really good one. Good for grounding. I'm recording already.
Perfect. We entered the time portal, baby, where just time is
Yeah.
illusory, it doesn't exist.
Welcome to Openly Spoken, the podcast to help you show up, speak out, and be seen. Here you'll get to eavesdrop on connected women's conversations about self-love, confidence, healing, relationships, creativity, and more. I'm your host, Celia Antonio, and I am your guide to getting you grounded into your body, feeling your full spectrum of emotion, and expanding your fullest self-expression. I also pop in here from time to time with solo episodes where I give you tips, tricks, and resources like meditations, visualizations, and all the things to get you grounded, to get you to feel, to get you to alchemize, and to get you to expand and express yourself fully. I'm so grateful that you're here, and I invite you to now put your hands on your heart, take a deep breath, set a tone for how you want to be as you show up for this podcast, take what resonates in this podcast, leave out what doesn't resonate, and take some time to reflect and to contemplate. And if there's anything in the podcast you want to chat about, you can always reach out to me on Instagram at selfexpressbabe. Thank you so much for being here. Now let's get started. Today's episode was such a joy to record, and it was such a joy to be in Lucie's presence. We talked about being empowered versus being in power. We talked about sacred sexuality, self-discovery, body wisdom, the male gaze, survival mode, the reptilian brain, healing and awakening. It really is just kind of like we're hanging out in our living room together chatting, and that's like what all of the episodes have turned into with this podcast, which I freaking love. So a little bit about Lucie. Lucie Al is a psychic and intuitive business mentor. She guides women to connect to their intuition for the liberation of their truest expression. Lucie leads with her pleasure as a mentor for visionary women ready to reclaim their power. And as a guide, teacher, and healer, she walks alongside her clients to guide them into turning on their uniquely, magically blended gifts and bridging and amplifying their connection with their spirit guides. And before we dive in, I'll show you a little peep on what's coming up in this episode.
It's just like you free to think whatever you think. This is my own journey. And it's just like she's not imposing that on anyone else's. And my journey is my journey, and I never want to impose that on anyone else. I respect every opinion. I respect them. Whatever
Yeah.
you think, it's your thought, it's your process. It's not mine.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the biggest thing in the world, that when we get to that level of I respect either or answer with no judgment, you do you kind of thing, that's a definitely different energetics. And it's just beautiful to be in those kind of rooms, to be honest. Let's
I'm working on making it feel more organic instead of being like, welcome to the podcast, Lucie. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, it's always a bit
Instead,
challenging, isn't it? Like I'm still
right.
like in keeping in this format that you said, but I kind of leaning into this one of like, let's just be on hi, how are you? And kind of like going in with the flow. It's great. It's all
Yeah.
good.
Well, I'm delighted to chat with you. And we were just talking about like feeling empowered in our bodies. And yeah, I kind of wanted to continue that. I can
Yeah.
I can
And I,
relate
I
with
even
you.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
and I said empowered, but like it's not empowered, it's really much empower because
In
I feel
power,
like there is
yeah.
that very very slight thread of being in power and empowered. Empowered, it feels like there is still someone holding the reins for you.
Mm, so
But
good,
in
so
power
true.
is like you, like it's just like I don't need you to hold the reins or hold the fort
Mm-hmm.
for me. I'm like whatever I decide, and
Yeah.
it's it takes fucking balls. And I'm sorry for cursing and using
No,
those
it's
words,
okay. It's welcome.
because I don't have balls. I'm a woman, but it's kind of what it
It
feels
takes
like.
ovaries, big old ovaries.
Ovaries or boobs or whatever.
I love it.
Yeah, being naked in the internet,
Yeah.
probably something like that.
So funny. Um, but I could totally like agree with you that I feel the most empowered in power that I've ever been, which I love what you just brought up about that. I totally agree with you. That's why I recently changed my on my Instagram. It used to say
Mm.
women's empowerment mentor, and I changed it to liberation mentor. I'm like, liberation sounds way more like, whew, I'm free, I'm self-expressed, I feel at home in my body. Like empowerment is like, yeah, there's something like
It's the
still a little
antechamber.
sticky
It's the
there.
foreplay of power. It's always
Yeah.
like what I'm like as a psychic is kind of what like I saw it like a few months ago, and I was like, it's basically or in the room. If you're going through, it's an escape room. Like you're going into the escape room, you're looking for the keys, and then you have to find the power to put the keys in the door and turn the door and open the door into something you don't know about. And she's like, I'm going in, and it's and there's like you open the door, it's full light, and you're like, oh, what am I doing? And like a lot of people like, I'm going to close this door. Empowerment is fine. Let's just stay there. And like, or, like most
Mm,
people are just like, if you really are putting the keys on the door, just open it and just like let
yeah.
it sit out like the whole feelings of what it is to be in power. And in
Yeah.
power is also being vulnerable, feeling all the feels, feeling sadness, feeling fucking like on the top of the world, on the top of the world, but everything, it could be everything in a split second. It's
Yeah.
everything, which is,
I love
yeah.
how beautifully you like illustrated that, like that liberation really takes, again, ovaries or whatever it is.
It take eyes, I don't know.
Or eyes, like it
I don't
takes
know.
like an open heart and like just courage to go
Mm.
into those depths of yourself that you're afraid to look at. Like we were even talking about before we recorded how there's someone who does a podcast where people are naked, and you're
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't mind being naked, and how there's a part where it's like, ooh, for me as well, I love to just be free and be naked and be, even on the podcast right now, like, I'm not wearing very many clothes, but like on the internet and out in person when I'm walking, I tend to cover up my body because it feels unsafe.
Mm.
It feels
That's
like something bad is going to happen to me.
mm.
And I know that it comes from like, past things in relationships that I need to process. And that's like recently come up where I'm like, oh, okay, here's where it
Mm.
started.
And I do feel there is another layer that's for every woman,
Hmm.
which is all about to do with the man gaze.
Oh, yes. Let's please talk about that. I haven't talked about that on this podcast in a while.
Man gaze is it's hard for like, and if you'd never heard about me, the hard word, it never comes. It's very very rarely you see it. Like you're going to hear me, or I'm going to write that because I have done a lot of work around that, but it's hard because the man gaze is also being like in the position of like you might just by being there ignite sexual rising to someone else's without
Mm,
doing anything.
yeah.
And this is deemed like we have been conditioned to really know this is unsafe. It's like it's been it for generation. We need to cover up because men cannot control themselves. And it's kind of like the men gaze is the worst thing that could happen to you because you're like, oh my God, I did not cover enough. And and it comes back to, and I know it's probably going to be a hard word to say again, but it's kind of coming back from the culture, the rap culture.
Yeah.
Someone took over some women, the women power, which is lying into her womb, her sacral, and it's like,
Hmm.
what were you wearing? What did you get
Exactly.
anything with this current situation? Can you tell me?
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it.
Yeah.
So,
And
it's,
what's really the issue here that most people don't like to talk about, and like I totally get it, it's totally triggering, is recognizing that men have a lot of like blocks with being able to feel, being able to like they have a lot of freedoms, yes, but there's certain freedoms that they don't have, or there's certain like kind of like standards and stereotypes that they have that breeds this behavior of treating women in a way that's not respectful, which is so ironic because when you dive into your own sexual healing work, I don't know how your experience is with that, but from me, like diving into my own sexual healing stuff completely changed my view on what sex was. And I'm like, whoa, wow. Like it's this beautiful, artistic, spiritual thing, but my whole life I was taught it was like a like
yeah, it's
I don't
pounding.
even
Let's put it
yeah,
this way. Like
exactly.
taking meat and pound is like, nah, that's not really that.
Yeah.
You know?
I mean,
And
it could be that if like you're feeling a certain way and
yeah,
that, but
it's
that's like
okay.
one aspect of like so many different layers and beautiful like, and that again takes a like a bravery and a courage to open that door, to be raw, to be vulnerable. You can't have a sexual experience like that if you're not open and raw and vulnerable.
Oh my gosh, I love that conversation. Like I didn't expect it to go it this way, but I'm like,
Right.
I'm all ears. Like, where are we going? Yeah, and I don't. We all are our own level. Like we cannot measure what level of sexual healing we are. At the end of the day, but like
Hmm.
personally, like when you were saying, I was like, yeah, like my yoni introduced herself like a couple of weeks ago and she has a name and it's the most random name ever. And like when I said it to my friend, it was like, that's so random. And like it's just like, no, that's not lit up Jessica. And she was like, who's Jessica? It was like, this is her down there. I was like, what are you saying? And again, it's fun. Like, you know, and some people was like, what are you doing? Is it like, and it's just a name that came to me. And maybe because of the psychic abilities, like she kept saying that. And every time I say the word, it's just like, ding a ding a ding. And I was like, okay, there is something there. But you know, when you were saying about like um the sexual empowerment is what, like the sexual empowerment is the first step, but then it's being in full power of the of sexual self, which is
Hmm.
it's sacred. Like the biggest thing that
Yeah.
we like I'm seeing in the world what's happening as well in the like in the modeling, it's really changing of like instead of like this is just sex or it's just self pleasure or whatever, it's a sacred rendezvous with you. It's a sacred
Yeah.
discovery of who you are. And like this, for me, the sexual power is also realizing that your body is talking to you. And not just the yoni side, every part of your skin has
Mm-hmm.
something to tell you. And the
Yeah.
thing is, when you treat it well, it's going to be treating you even better.
Yeah.
And it's just, this is very a super turn on thing. Just thinking of this,
Yeah.
but yeah. Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. You need that like relationship with yourself on that level before you can have that same thing with other people. And
Yeah.
then, oh, where do we go from here?
I don't know. Like the thing is that like maybe some people is like, how do you start? And I'm like, It depends where you are in the world. Like I'm personally in Europe, so it's not really common, but like I know in Australia, it's pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
It's like kind of going into women's circle. First of all, like I know in Europe, like circles are very, it's everywhere. Looking for a women's circle where you can come and just talk. And the thing is, when you are lying in around the circle, if you come with the intention, I'd love to heal this,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't take the voice, someone in the circle will voice it out for you, and you realize that
Mm.
you're not the only one, and they will going to share their stories, and then you're going to feel called to share your story. And this is how we mend and how we really heal the sisterhood, and we heal our own self sexual like wounds and everything. So that's going to, for me, would be the first thing I would say to a woman there, just like how do I do that? Like that sounds interesting, or like hell no, but like there is like hell no, but this should be the first step to do. But I have a friend, she's also was in my podcast, which she's in Australia, but she does yoni massage.
Mm-hmm.
Yoni massage is like literally having someone massaging your yoni and the outside and the inside, which is could be very triggering for a lot of women. But it's also in the ancient world, that was the women initiation. Because we had like men
Mm.
has kind of a level of initiation, like for a long time they were going hunting, or they had to live by themselves for a few days, blah blah blah. And women had their own activation, their own initiation into, you no longer a girl, you are becoming a woman. And the yoni massage were that activation of like, this is the part that is sacred, and you need to know what it does,
Mm. Yeah.
because you're not letting anyone like coming in like this. You are
Yeah.
sacredly choosing. And then that was kind of throughout the year, like throughout the world, with like the kind of, I don't like that word, so I'm not going to use it, but like the men trying to overpower women.
Mm.
You heard it's the word with the P, but I don't I don't subscribe to that word. So I'm not going to say it. It's been kind of like trying to muzzle a lot of the power of women, and power of women is usually lying into between our legs, let's be honest. We are a vessel of reception.
Mm-hmm.
We are being designed to receive.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just and it's like, you shouldn't be doing anything around here. It's like basically you're not allowed to receive anything,
Mm.
or it needs to be in a painful emotionally or physically, and that's normal, which is
Mm.
not. Just be it this way. That was a heavy subject, but but yeah, saying that is there is a big part of the initiation that is happening now.
Mm-hmm.
Like the initiation, like I'm not saying you should go and book yourself a yoni massage if you're like, hell no, that's not going to work for you. But it's just knowing it is. It's just a
Yeah.
seed that's been planted, and you like might be exploring another way of exploring your sexuality, in on your by yourself or with others. And I don't mean going and masturbating in front of everyone. However, that's also a circle that exists, many,
Yeah.
many ones in the world. But it's not for everyone, let's put
Yeah.
it this
Yeah,
way.
you have to be ready for that, like emotionally, spiritually,
Mm-hmm.
because if you do that before you're ready, then
It's
that's like a
trauma.
violation. Yeah, yeah, you're
It's
traumatizing
trauma.
yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But yeah,
Mm.
it's that's kind of like when we were talking about sexual, like power is like, that's what's one of the big things. But like the usually, and I don't know about you, but my sexual empowerment that turned into power did not happen the first thing. My spiritual awakening came way before
Mm-hmm.
this part of my body were, okay, I'm ready.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's the same thing for you.
Yeah, me too. I had a spiritual awakening in like when I was like 24 because of
Mm-hmm.
yoga and breath work. And
Mm.
the sexual awakening honestly happened last year. So very new still for me.
Ooh.
And like that's like In my opinion and in my life experience, when you have a spiritual awakening, like it's not just that time. Like if you stay curious and you stay on this path of like, you know, I'm curious about this, I'm going to learn about that. I'm curious about that. And you like stay open to signs that the universe gives you, then you're going
Mm-hmm.
to have spiritual awakening after spiritual awakening after spiritual awakening.
You ready? Buckle up.
Oh, I should
Yeah.
have brought popcorn.
Oh yeah. Mm-mm. Be ready. You probably be horror movies at some level sometimes, but yeah, I agree with you. And my personal like the first step of my awakening was in 2017 when Christmas Eve or whatever Christmas holidays, I was in a car park and I was reversing
Mhm.
very, very slowly. And I very, very slowly bumped into someone else's car. But like it was just like touch and it was like, it was just like, oh, I
Uh-huh.
went too far. It was like, not, kind of
Yeah, yeah.
like nothing. Like, and I didn't know the guy was in the car. And this guy got bonkers, a family man, got bonkers and started attacking me. And to block me to get out, so I couldn't leave. And I opened my window and it came into my car, and I thought it took my car keys, because when that happened, you're like, it's all red, you cannot really think through it,
Mm.
just like run for your life, you cannot run. Okay, fight, like, just kind of play dead for your life. He's coming at you, so what is the next thing? It's like, going after your life, like just going in fight. I did not fight physically, but it went kind of like energetic, like big boof. And I was like, I left this, like nothing happened. The guy, like, he was with his wife, so I do suppose they were fighting. And when that happened, it was like the fight moved to me.
Mm.
And it was a very triggering experience. And I was like, I lost me. And I was like, what happened there? I just
Mm.
never want to feel like that ever again in my life. So I started therapy,
Mhm.
which we healed in one session, this iteration. But it's just like, I kept like, nothing happened. The guy was not injured or anything like that. But I kept running home and I said, I'm going to jail. I'm going to jail. I'm going to jail. I just don't know what. And I was like calling my partner, I'm going to jail. Why? And he's like, because I nearly run over him. I was like, because my head, I was like, run over him. And like, I never did this. But I was like, the whole,
Yeah.
that thing is like, what if I drop into that voice? And I was like, I don't want to be that person. And in full, like when doing the work in therapy, the big thing that happened and showed up was like, yes, you were in your reptilian brain. You got attacked. You tried
Mm.
to leave. You couldn't leave.
Mhm.
You tried to play dead. It came at you. So what did
Mhm.
you have other choice? You had to fight.
Mhm.
And the fight response was really scared me, because I was like, I don't want to be in a fighting mode like this ever in my life. But this was my first iteration of awakening.
Mm.
But it was the unintentional one. It's kind of the crack of like, ooh, if I actually retrace what happened, that was the first, something
Yeah.
is can be changed.
Mhm.
And then like the biggest one were when I gave birth to my first daughter.
I saw that in your Instagram, like
Oh
how that
yeah.
was an initiation. Like you have a
Such
post
a
where you're
deep
like,
initiation. Yeah,
yeah.
such a deep initiation. And in a sense, I don't wish it to anyone, but at the end of the day, that might
Uh,
happen. You just need to, like, the big thing was like, I got this, my soul knew that it was my initiation, that it was what was needed for me to seek for deeper meaning in my life,
mhm.
because I was like, okay, what's happening there? I was like, I gave
Mm.
birth to my daughter, and I kept saying to everyone, I gave my birth in the emergency section, was very traumatic to me, for a side note for anyone that is listening. But
Mhm.
I was like, if I did not have her with me, I was like, am I even a mom? And I was telling that everyone, that all my friends that I didn't have a crazy amount of friends that had kids, but I was like, I know I am a mom. That's kind of a no, but I don't feel like I'm a mom. I love this baby, but
Mhm.
there is something missing.
Mm.
And it took me 5 months and a half and go to a 3-day retreat to give birth to her. energetically. Like I'm saying, I used to say mentally, but that was not really the case. In like that,
Yeah.
and I had the full release of like, oh my God, I'm a mother.
Yeah.
Because my whole body was designed to be like, you're going to give birth to her naturally, and did not happen.
Yeah.
So my whole thing was like, you fail. The only
Mm.
thing you were supposed to do, you couldn't do it. You were such a failure. And I'm actually even telling you that. I was like, I didn't even realize those words at the time, but you fail. Like, you are designed to give birth through the canal and you didn't.
Mm.
And it's just like, that was the first, like the going, giving her to birth to her. And then that would be my first step of like the initiation of my sexual empowerment was like 2019, yeah, when I actually had a healing session around my womb because
Right
I
on
had
time
so much
before,
anger.
right
Hmm.
on time before the pandemic, right?
Yeah. Um, yeah, that was another initiation, isn't it?
Yeah, for
But
all of us.
that was the best one. I
Yeah.
know I might be a weirdo one, but it
Yeah,
was the
I
best.
I agree. Like I know that so many people, lost family
Don't feel that.
members. Well, I lived in New York City in the beginning of the pandemic, so like
Mm.
I actually knew people who passed away, and it
Yeah.
was really scary, but like that for me at least, and I know for a lot of people, freed me from needing to work for someone else because it really showed me like, hey, this job that you have here in New York City where you're making the most money you've ever made before, it's not stable either.
Mm.
So you might as well stop waiting to start your business, which is what I always really wanted to do. And you might as well do it now, you know?
I
And it
love
was
that.
such a, also just the invitation to have nothing on my schedule was great.
Best thing ever. And I know, like
Yeah.
as you were saying, there is people that like have another story, but like personally, at the beginning, I got fed with the fear.
Mm.
I was like in very deep fear, and then at some point I was like, what am I doing? I never watched news. What am I changing this for? And I
Uh,
came back to stopping watching news and like withdrawing from it, and I was like, I actually feel better, like not to have to be conscious of this. It's just like I don't need to have this in my mind all the time and being reminded of it all the time. And the idea of like, for me, was the biggest initiation was everyone is at home with the kids anyway. And like,
mm,
if I don't want to do anything, I don't have to do anything. But also, if I do something and my kids are roaring in the background, that's life.
yeah.
And like, I only had one child at the time, but it's just the whatever. Because just for a really long time, there was like a big stigma around like you need to be doing some that weird level of 9 to 5, even though you were in business for yourself, but because you have kids,
Mm,
you should not show that you're a mother because you're
mm,
business women before, first and foremost, when you're in your business, which I don't believe that is, but it's just the
yeah.
big thing around the full ownership, like the full 360 of like, this is the whole me, and you like, I am home with my kids, so whatever.
Yeah.
You're not liking it, I just can't change that. So that
Yeah.
has been a very deep change, and the ownership of like, yeah, like I have a schedule and my schedule is around my kids, so I'm not saying I'm don't want to work with you. It's just this is the way it has to be if you want to work with me, which
Hmm.
is so different than before of like the person would be saying, I can't do this day, and you're like, oh, that doesn't really suit me, but okay. And
Mm,
now I'm like,
yeah.
no, my days are those days. And
Yeah.
you know, I am either way, I honor your decision, but yeah, I just don't need to be working around someone else's schedule. And again, I'm not saying I'm not going to be accommodating, because sometimes, the person also have kids and it's not accommodating to them, so we'll find out. But there is a lot of things that we don't voice out. We're not coming in, like someone comes and just jump in the middle of your week and you're like, I actually didn't want to work that week.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
cycle, like we were talking about cycle before we did the recording, and like you have a week of the month, you're like, yeah, you kind of need to integrate that week, and you're like, actually that does not sit well on my calendar of that week, that I cannot be around people. Not because you're angry or anything like that, it's just like your body is shutting down, so you need to honor that. And at something like before the pandemic, there was a lot of women who would be like, okay, that doesn't suit me, but like, oh well, I do it, you know. And I'm
Yeah.
like, actually, this week is already fully booked, even like it's fully booked with me. And like, how about the next week?
Mm-hmm.
And this is power again. Mic drop.
Yeah. Yeah, and it like you show up better in your business and for the people that you're like serving or even just recording a podcast with if you're honoring yourself first and foremost, because then on the energetic side, like when you're on the call, you're bringing like excitement and you're like, yay, I'm happy to be here instead of being like, oh, fuck, I gotta.
Yeah,
All
doesn't
right,
suit
let me
me
put
this
a
time.
smile on my face.
Ah. Yeah, no, that doesn't work for me. Definitely not. But you know, I know it's your podcast, but there is something that I chatted with you yesterday that you shared on your
Mhm.
stories. Can we
Yes,
discuss that,
I actually was thinking
please?
about that because that goes along kind of with what you were
Hmm.
just saying about like you used to feel this kind of like pressure and stigma to like if you're a business owner and you're a mom that you have to hide that you're a mom. And what I shared about on my story was basically about how business and all of life really is all about human relating. And part of why I shared that was because that's like something that I'm kind of working through at the moment. And so I guess I'll just say what it was
Drop
for the
it.
for the listeners.
Do this.
So I was kind of reflecting on how a lot of coaches on Instagram, at least, sound the same, and they kind of push this narrative of like make 10K a month, and like this is how you make 10K a month. Here's my strategy for 10K a month, and just like 10K a month is fucking everywhere. Like everyone and their mother is throwing up this 10K a month vomit.
Yeah.
And as a new business owner, during the pandemic, that's what I saw. So I'm like, okay, I didn't even realize that I just like subconsciously was like, all right, that has to be my goal, I guess.
Mm.
And I think that's not a good goal for everyone. And for me at least, and people who can relate to like what I'm currently experiencing in my embodiment in my life, I think it's more helpful to focus on connections with humans and focus on like when I sit and talk with other women or when I sit and DM people, when I try to share my services with people, when I just try to relate to other people, what is there? What's showing up in my body? What is that anxiety coming up in my throat that's preventing me from saying my offering with like energy? You know, I've seen a few people, and I've done it too, like when I look back at my stories from like 2 years ago, like, oh, I
Cringe.
can, yeah, I'm like, oh, hire me for your website, okay, bye.
Hey. No, I
You
get you.
know.
I love that conversation. I could speak about that for a very a good amount of hours. And I'm exactly where you are at a very deep level of the that's kind of like my current process is like the unlearning of
Yeah.
bullshit, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to be sugarcoat that because you know it's like it's working for everyone, and I truly, and I'm going to be going further than yours, and I probably be going to be hit for that, but this is still masculine energy trying to trick you in the feminine energy. It's all about the receiving and everything, but this is the by me consciousness. Is like
Mm,
anything needs to go by me to get the result. And this
mm,
is a non-sustainable way because
exactly.
you know you were saying like the 10K this 10K that, but like how many time you want a genuinely a beautiful network over Facebook, let's say you, and like people ask you to be friends, and the first message they say it's pitching you already.
Oh,
And like, I help this, but yeah, and like, I help blah, blah, blah to make 6 figure or 10K, blah. And I'm like, okay, darling, let's just sit down. Open
Calm
your
down.
heart to me. Yeah, open your heart to me.
Mm.
Let's just be sisters first and foremost. And then I
Mm.
see if I'm interested in your service. But
Have
there
you
is a lot
responded to
of
someone
the,
in that way?
hmm?
Have you
I did.
responded to someone in that way?
Nope.
Okay,
Because
because
most of the time they come with the big masculine energy,
okay.
which if you were to come in the full feminine, they will not understand. So it's
Mm.
also around that. Like the thing is, did I not do that? Actually, I probably did. I probably did. But there is
Because
a,
I'm
for me,
curious, like how someone would respond to that.
I keep you
That's why I
posted.
asked.
I keep you posted. I do this
Okay.
exercise for you.
Okay.
But it's the big like I think it's just like it's the very skewed idea, and it's not about the online world, it's the business world that I don't know if you ever like because you started online, so you may never have been on a real networking event, the old style one, around the table and like doing the speech and everything.
Yeah.
This is what you learn a business school, like the
Mm.
business like street school, because you go and you just take the boat and you just go start sailing, and you're looking at everyone else and you're like, okay, that should be the way, and you learn to present yourself in a selling way
Mm.
of like, I
Ugh.
am this person and I help this person to do this to achieve this result, instead of like, hi, how are you, what are you doing, where are you from, and
Yeah.
all
What
of
do you
this. And like, I
value?
know,
Like what's
like
yeah.
what's popping. I don't know. I don't know why this I've said that, but it's the big deeper connection. And I had, you were saying, did I say that to someone? I don't think I did really, but like I had someone that came. I added her on Instagram, on Facebook, and I kept
Hmm.
seeing her message on my feed, and I was like, okay, okay, okay. And at what point I was like, okay, I cannot sustain her message. This is
Mm.
too 3D and too masculine for me. So I removed her. But I did not block her, I just removed her. And she kept insisting sliding into my DMs. Like that's the real thing, like sliding into my DMs. And I keep removing and not answering. Yet last time she sent me a GIF like, hey there, have you seen me? And I was like, okay, that's it. And
Mm.
like you do not understand the realness of what this is about. We're not doing a business transaction. We need to come back to what is the most important things in the world, is going to
Yeah,
have a heart-to-heart connection. It's
exactly.
mending the bridge of the idea that we all separated,
So good.
you know? But when you get to that, like there is people that are not ready for it yet. They need
Yeah.
to like you probably in my podcast I talk about this a lot, but it's I never remember his name, but the book is about, it's called The Second Mountain.
Okay.
And there's a lot of the model, like the coaching model industry, even though I don't like the word industry, but that really models the first mountain, which is fame, power, and money.
Mm.
It's kind of like I go, 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 go to the top of the mountain. And some people will go up the top of the mountain and at one point just going something and they feel empty and they go in the valley. But some of us will go in the mid, like gravitate a little bit middle way of the first mountain, and you're like, yeah, that's not it. You get hit or whatever, and you go in the valley, and you go before you really feel fully empty. But the thing is, the first mountain is a mountain that you are conquering. You are like in full force climbing
Mm.
this. And then when you go in the valley, the second mountain takes you, it
Mm.
conquers you, and it's the whole spiritual awakening and all of that. And like how many people that you've seen that were like, I don't know, it's probably not 1,000, but like if you see even Will Smith, I know like he has a, some of like weird things happen the last few months, but if you look at Will Smith was a very, very successful man. He had loads of money. And at some point, I was like, I'm fucking empty. What's happening? He went to Peru, got ayahuasca, and now is the full spiritual person. Again, when you're spiritual, doesn't mean you cannot be doing silly things. That happens. But if you still falling, it was like, what happened there?
Yeah.
It's like
I
he
didn't know
looked
that
like he had
about him.
everything and he
Huh.
didn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Because that
And
when the focus is just on numbers instead of like real people that are going to be there for you, to witness you, to hold you, for you to also witness, for like how you mentioned before, like this is why the sister circles are so important for women.
so
Like
important.
we need that consistency of connection to, first of all, like how you said, if you come to a sister circle with an intention and you like don't have the courage to say it, someone else is going to say it because
100%. Because
yeah,
the
because
universe,
we're all
like the
one.
source, yeah, and source always listen because we are one. We are like you are
Mm-hmm.
just the mirror of someone else's. So if you come with a deep intention, and you don't need to be like holding the faith, like I need to keep this in my mind. You just set the intention even before you go into the room. I desire to heal this, or I desire to hear about that, but I'm not
Mm-hmm.
strong enough. Please show me. I guarantee you someone will talk about it in the circle. And you're
Yeah.
probably going to cry because it's going to be a very emotional moment. And you're like, oh my God, what's happening here? You know, and we're going to talk about and that will be people that I manifested it. You did not manifest it, you
Mm,
created it,
mm,
which is the deeper level of manifestation. Actually, we
mm,
never manifest anything. And that's
mm.
hard for many, many of us. Like, even for me, I was like, what do you mean? What, I'm not manifesting things? No, I'm creating it.
So would you say is the difference between creating it and manifesting it?
That's a very good question.
Mm-hmm.
Manifestation is still lying in the 3D consciousness. I don't know, like I don't know how spiritual your listener, like the podcast listener, are, but like 3D consciousness is more. It's the to me like there is a book talking about that. It's called the four. It has four levels, but for me there is three levels in one, and then there is the next step. Like let's put it this way, like the full energetics of things, but when you come back to the consciousness level, is like in the 3D level you have the to me, everything happens to me, like you
Mm,
know, like everything is poor me, blah blah blah, you know, you can't, it's everything is dark, nothing can change, whatever. And then at some point you get like a glimpse of like, okay, let's do it, and you go to the by me consciousness that we talked about a little bit before, which is not sustainable. Like they are like,
mm-hmm.
okay, I'm going and going and going, the masculine, the doing and the doing and the doing, and like, and as you were saying about the 10K, let's have that focus of the 10K. And this is not sustainable. Like it can be sustained for like some level of time for some of us, but at the end of the day, most people that do that at some point they stop because it's
Mm.
not sustainable. So
Yeah,
they
they get burned
change
out.
the way, you know,
Yeah.
they just like, that's not working. But then when you are like, when you go in the by me, you're kind of listening, it's like there must be another way. So you kind of like starting and dabbing into manifestation, like manifesting um a car space in front of the
Mm,
shop, and all of those little things, like manifesting. And I'm not like, it's not like I'm not saying it does not exist. It's the same thing, but that's the next level of manifestation when you realize that this is still 3D, because
mm.
manifestation is happening through me. So it's kind of a fluke thing. You're like,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, it's happening through me. So like I'm manifesting a car, like a car space, but next
Mm.
time may not. Kind of like it's still kind of like
Yeah.
moving from by me and through me, which is, or really the through me is usually kind of a fluke thing. It's just like, oh yeah, I just don't know what happened.
Yeah.
And then when you
Mm-hmm.
kind of like dabbing into the 5D consciousness, 5D consciousness, the full connection with source, realizing that we are all one and we are the creator of everything we see and we do and whatever. And it's hard to understand and grasp at some level as well. And it's hard on the heart as well sometimes. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
But the like 5D consciousness is like the creator consciousness is as me, which just means that everything that happens, you have created it,
I can see why that is difficult
you know, because we were talking
for the
about,
heart. Yeah.
at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
of this call, we were talking about power and, you know, men gaze and everything. It's just like it's kind of, or you know,
Mm-hmm.
the the R word, let's put it this way, but like it's there's like, can you tell me this like I made that happen to me.
Mm.
And again, I'm saying this is the levels, and I'm definitely dabbing into the 5D consciousness, but I'm not fully integrated in that, because this part of me, this part of the creator consciousness, still rings very deep wound around, and trauma and unfairness of
Yeah.
things. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
But this is kind of the idea.
I read something recently that kind of, I guess, answered the question of like, why would I create all this bad, quote, bad things that
Mm.
happened to me? And in the book, he said that the things that happen in your life that are like a contraction, like a, or like a fear or anything like that, that your higher self creates it for you to be pointed to what's actually true and what's actually real. And in this book, it's called Busting Loose from the Money Game. Like it's a, have you read that book?
Ooh,
It's
I'm
really
loving
good.
it.
It's really good. It's it's like a book that's supposed to be about like money and money mindset, but it's really about like just everything. Everything. And
Mm.
he talks about how like when these things happen in life that are like contractive and like scary and you know feel like they're bad or negative, then that's the moment for you to fully feel, like let's say it's fear, fully feel the fear and amplify it, and then come to the realization like I am creating this, like there's so much power in this fear that I am making, which means I am fucking powerful. And
Mm.
he also talks about how like as we're going on in this life, we're kind of living in like a hologram,
Mm.
and everything around us, like we're creating it. Everything people say to us is like
100%.
yeah,
Oh my
it's like
gosh.
it's a mind-blowing book. It's so good. I actually want to start a book circle for it in October.
Yes, I'm here. I'm there.
Yes.
I'm like, yes,
Yes.
I love that. Those kind of books.
It's such a good
I'm
book.
subscribed. Like, on, it's already read. No, I'm kidding. But like, it's just for the in that level. But yeah, and giving an idea, like an image of things that sometimes, because people, it's sometimes hard to grasp it. So as a psychic, I see image, but like I'm going, if you were to understand about you creating things, how many times have you been looking for something and like you were sure 100% it was not on the table, and you come back 5 minutes ago and it's exactly where you thought it was, but you didn't
Yeah.
see it last time
Yeah.
because he actually changed quantum field. He actually shifted like maybe 80 degrees or whatever, and is out of sight, but it's still there, but it's in another plane. And just, I like this morning was like, no, this afternoon I was looking for my tea leaf stuff, like, to put my loose leaf in it. And I was like, I'm sure it's there. I'm looking at it. I'm like, looked at it, like exactly where it was. It was not there. I just turned my head. I put my head again. It was just there. It was like, no one touched it. That's not even possible. And I was like, you were not there 2 seconds ago. I can't vouch
Yeah.
for it. It's just
Yeah.
the biggest, the weirdest thing ever. But it's just yeah, I'd love to read this book. It feels like my new book, definitely.
Yeah.
My
Cool.
nightstand book, that's the word.
I'm
But yeah,
excited
it's
to talk
just
about it.
it's amazing that we are talking about that, and it's getting louder, and a lot of people are going away from that,
Yeah.
and it's unsettling for a lot of people,
Un-
because that's also
uncentering. Uncentering, you said?
unsettling. Yeah,
Oh,
unsettling.
unsettling.
Unsettling because it require, like, going into the more feminine way
Mm,
really, really deeply requires to surrender. And like the first was
mm,
like, well, how do you do this? First of all, but there is so many deeper understanding of the surrendering and like the being.
mm-hmm.
I was with a client of mine over the week, and cracked open in front of us, like the deep, deep awakening in front of us. And I was like, wow, like the amount of like she was crying not because she was sad. That was like that deep level of grief of what did I do right
Mm.
now?
Mm.
Why did I choose that route? And again, everyone's awake at some point in their life. It could be at 18, it could be at 10, it could be at 45, or it could be at like 90. Does it, like, and it's fine. It was meant to be this way. But
Yeah.
it's just the amount of like, oh my God, I now grasp the idea of what is surrendering. I don't know how to do it.
Mm.
I grasp the idea. And it's just like, it's like they're all like, how I do that? It's like, you don't need to know how. I was like,
Yeah.
what? But yeah, it's a beautiful field that we are in.
Mm-hmm.
I genuinely know that it's the most beautiful thing, like beautiful field we are in, and we're pioneers in
Yeah.
this field.
Wow. Yeah. I didn't even realize that.
Because like you yesterday, your message was like, we all like obsessing. It's not the word that you said, but like, let's just like, we're all obsessing about making the 10K.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just like, in terms of a logical side, like, if you make 10K and you have an expenses of 10K every month, you're making zero. Let's be fully transparent there as well. But they
Mm-hmm.
also, just going after the money, it's leading yourself to emptiness, because
Yeah.
you're not doing the real relationship. You're just expecting the check
Yeah.
instead of expecting the love exchange, the soul contract exchange.
Yeah.
And to me, right now in this current paradigm, is money is the way to exchange service for time or whatever. But if this was tomorrow, like there were no more money, what we will be trading off? Love for love.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the thing is, when we are expecting the check, we're not in a loving relationship.
Yeah. That's so true.
And this is,
Yeah.
it takes balls to own that.
Yeah.
Again, ovaries, boobs, whatever. But yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's a big subject that is starting, which is beautiful. I'm excited for this new chapter of the humanity. But sometimes it's super, super new. So we
Yeah.
don't even know. We're still downloading the information. Like, it's like still integrating those. So we kind of like,
Yeah.
we see the big picture, but there is no words for it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Humanity hasn't caught up with whatever is coming. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And what's wild too is like there's what about 8 billion people on this planet and all these different people. Wow, an hour already went by.
Oh yes. I
How
just
are
saw
you
my
on
my
time?
my computer said, "Do not disturb." It's 10 p.m. here.
How are you on time? Do you want to keep going?
I'm good. On the evening, I'm always flexible. So
Okay.
that's the reason I love doing
Um,
evening ones. Mm.
awesome. Good. Okay. Um, what I was gonna say floated away.
Oh my gosh, I have it and I can't see it. I
Oh,
can't
I'm
remember.
remembering it. I'm remembering it. A vision of different planets came, like just little planets came to my mind, and
Perfect.
that's how I remembered it
Hmm.
because yes, we're here and we're like, seeing that there's this like big shift and big awakening coming, but what's mind-blowing to think about is like there are people who this isn't even on their radar. Like going back to the thing of where our consciousness is creating our reality, like there are people on this planet who live in a completely different reality than we do. They have no idea about the male gaze. They have no idea about coming into union with people. They have no idea what it's like to not live in scarcity and to like surrender because they're so in it, because there's so much conditioning everywhere, in media, even in language. I've noticed throughout this conversation, there are certain words where you're like industry, and then you're like, I don't really like that word, or you're like, the thing where men take over. It starts with a P, but I don't really like that word. I love how intentional you are with that, because I think words and the way we use English or whatever language you speak is
Mm-hmm.
also a part of integrating and conditioning us. Like, for example, in North Korea, there's no word for love. There's
Oh,
no
my
word for
heart
love.
just
Isn't that
sinks
so
in
sad?
my socks. Oh my God, no.
There's no word for love there. There's an activist that I follow. I don't remember her name.
Oh my gosh. I'm utterly shocked. I just don't know why. It's just the not
Yeah,
even to
but
be able to define this feeling.
yeah, and you look at the culture there, and when you learn about how certain words don't exist in that place, you see, like, oh, okay, the language is also being used to keep people stuck there because they don't know. I don't even think there's a word for freedom there, or
No.
liberty, or
It's the same thing about like the what really made women like the rise of the future is female, let's put it this way. It's also
mm,
about like the full fight, even though it's not a fight, but like the request of like making as much people as possible as literate as possible. And I'm not
mm,
saying you like everything on the books are amazing, but knowing how to read gives you the words.
yeah.
Knowing how to read gives you like the word. If you read the word love but you don't know what that means, you could go to someone who's like, can you describe that to me? Can you explain what is that? And then that just like your mind is just going to craft something like a little things like, okay, love means this, and you could feeling this like that, and that makes something. And it's the same
Hmm.
thing when you learn a new language. I'm not my English is not my native language. Actually I'm French. So I had to learn all of those words that
Yeah,
I'm talking with you.
yeah, yeah.
I didn't know them even 15 years ago. So I had to learn those
Hmm.
and understand what they mean and the feeling around them and all of these. So, but like I'm shocked by North Korea, to be honest. But I
Yeah,
definitely get you. It's a pressure point. When you don't know, you cannot know. It's the big thing,
yeah, yeah. It's like
and
a blind spot in your consciousness.
yeah,
Like, you
you
don't
don't
know it, and
have
you don't know that you don't know it.
you don't know. You might feel it, but there is no word to express it. So
Hmm.
there is like, okay, it's kind of what we were talking about, like I was like, it's like the what is where are we going? There is so many things that we feeling it, but there is no words for it. So it's kind of hard to just sit down. I was like, let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah.
Where there's nothing to talk about. We don't have the words for it. So how can we talk about that? And but there is another thing that would come into my mind, but I can't remember. So that was not meant to be. Oh yes, the P word. I do feel like the reason why I'm like again like you were saying it like highlighting you like me not like saying I'm not using that word is because I I heard it probably too much, and
Mm.
I heard it in with the feminine wound, the feminine energy wound,
Hmm.
which it's kind of blaming everything on the P. Okay, I'm going to say the word
Mm.
just so like in case like what
So
is she
good.
talking about? Patriarchy. And that's kind of like every like a lot of people would be blaming me like, oh yeah, it's because of the patriarchy that women are like that. Let's be fully analyzing the world, okay?
Mm.
Women were raising children, men and like boys and girls. So even though we're talking about the patriarchy, in at every level of the society, everyone was involved because they did
Mm.
not know any better.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it's the reason that for me that like I might get some people like, what are you doing here, like again kind of like a rise of but it's just for me it's just like women, like men were going to work, women were at home with boys, and they were the one modeling what it is to be a man. And
Mm.
men don't cry this, and there was not like, even though even I'm sure
Yeah.
dad were involved like at some level, but most of the time they spend with the siblings and the mom, and the
Yeah.
women, because they were villages. So it's the whole society that are
Hmm.
responsible for where we are. And it's hard to even say that because I'm like, wait, how dare you say that about women and everything? They didn't know any better. So I'm not telling them this is their fault. It's just they didn't know any better. They were modeling something they were modeled. So they
Yeah.
keep going
Yeah.
because they didn't have the literacy or the thought or the words to realize this is not right
Hmm.
where we are now, because there were other things to do. Like we are in the most, like, I know it's going to probably be weird to say that, but it's never been so, we've never been so free as women or as human in the world. And I'm not saying everywhere in the world is the same, but
Yeah.
it would never be, it's a golden era for being a human, because most of us, I'm not saying all of us, have food on the table, have water or clean water to drink, and we have enough time to think of like, okay, my basic needs are met, what's next, and like climbing the ladder of
Yeah.
like of empowerment, of self-fulfillment. But at the time, even making dinner took 5 hours. It's like, what do you have time to do? Oh, I'm going to listen to an Audible. There were no Audible. There were no access to that. So,
Yeah.
it's just the whole, like, we were like, people were modeling from other modeling. So it was just like, it was skewed by the beginning, and it was not just because of men. It was the whole
Mm.
society saying that should be the way.
Yeah. I've
And
never
one
thought of
time,
it
like
like
at
that.
some point, that cracked, and it was like, this is not working.
Yeah.
Got reversed over everything, and then gone back to kind of a more mix of both, and then got like very more strict again, and it just brak. And again, it's like the second mountain talks about that in the 50s, in even more in the US, even more. It's like people were living in the neighborhood. They were going to the same shop. They were doing everything together. And it was like, oh, that's a beautiful
Mm.
thing. At some point, people was like, actually, it's at some level like we're so empty because there is no individualism.
Yeah.
So from that shifted to, from the we're all in this together, to individualism.
Mm.
And that was a beautiful thing until certain point. Like
Yeah.
individualism get women the power we have now, that helped so much, that helped the reducing the racism, all of, like,
Hmm.
like giving a voice to everyone.
Yeah.
But it went to a point that is actually, we are at the end of that. It's what's happening at the moment, is the climbing of the 10K by individualism,
Yeah.
instead of like, actually, is there another way to be fulfilled without rushing just for the paycheck, but fulfilled by the interaction, the relationship that I have? And of course, we're in the paradigm that it's still sustained. We need to be sustained by money. So that's but it's an energetic exchange and not a paycheck exchange.
Yeah. Yeah.
They do not vibrate at the same level.
Hmm.
And you're going to get found out if you try to just say that you want relationship and you just want the paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's going to be very hard for you. And I not use that word very lightly. But yeah,
I
I
love
know
the
it's
thoughts
a
you're
360 kind of conversation tonight, I'd say.
yeah, I love it. I love, like, I've never thought about it that way, that it was like everyone, but it makes total sense. It makes total sense. And then when you say that, like, we've never been so free, I agree with you. And like, my soul kind of has this really distant connection to like long time ago living in tribes. And I feel like we might have been more free then, but I don't know. Like, we would never know, you know? Like a
Yeah, I agree
time
with you.
where
And
like women
you're
and
right.
children were like in the center of
Oh,
lifestyle,
you're
you know?
100% right on that, for
I
sure.
have
And
like
when I say,
distant. Mhm.
go ahead, my apologies to drop it
I
to you. Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
have distant memories of that, and I always have. And I only recently learned that that was actually real. And I'm just like, what? How did
Past
I
life
know?
regression is deep.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that last time we
We did.
connected.
I think we did. Yeah, yeah. And I I agree with you. When I was saying like the more free is more free of thoughts. Is like more the idea of like
Mm.
we can go deep into subject that really interest us. Going into
Okay, I got
like
you.
that's the
I
more
see
like
what
the
you
for me
mean.
it's the
Yeah,
free like
instead
it's
of
that level
mhm.
of like we have food on the table, so we have the space, the mind space to be able to assess our spirituality, assess this and assess that. But the thing is,
Yeah.
in tribe, the food, the water, and everything was provided. So they had a very big pillar of spirituality. They had wisdom keepers. They had like, and women were wisdom keepers in that iteration. And again, I'm coming back to this book because it's just so good, but it was talking about that when the Europeans came over to America before it was the US, and they were the Native Americans there.
Hmm.
People were kept prisoner, but like European got prisoner by the tribes, like the Native American tribes. And when the European came and went to save them, quote unquote, they ran with the natives.
Mm.
They ran with them. Like, just, you saved us, but we don't want to be with you. We want to be with them. Because that was that level of community. And we were talking about the one consciousness. Like, even in the Native American level of things, like, there is more than just the masculine and the feminine, there is the fluidity of both,
Mm.
which is like integrating everything. And when when we're living in a society that integrates everything, men is not hardcore men, is a man and also women and also something else, and in moving in through all of that in fluidity. And I'm not saying they're
Mm.
probably having hardcore men, but there was not the intention of the tribe.
Yeah.
And it was, yes, that was probably, I know, not probably, it was a beautiful place to be. It was not the safest for women at some level as well, but it was a
Yeah.
good place.
Yeah. I also recently had something shared with me where it brought me to this kind of like thought where that I want to share with you,
Mm-hmm.
where we were kind of like talking about how women have been, oppressed by the P word. And
Mm-hmm.
how before, like in tribes, like it wasn't like that. Women foraged as well. And like very interesting what happened was like the plow was invented and agriculture was invented, and the plow was this big heavy thing that was better for a man to operate because they have
Mm.
naturally more upper body strength than we do. And so there was this kind of like flip of like the
Power,
man
like
had,
masculine
yeah,
power. Yeah.
yeah, this power flip. And the space we're in now, where women are more liberated than ever, and
Mm-hmm.
where there's
Because we
just
don't need
this,
upper body strength anymore.
yeah, we don't.
Robots done that now. We don't
I
need
love
you
it.
anymore. No, I'm kidding. I'm not saying that. I'm like, it's not true. That's very feminist, like the hardcore feminists. We don't need men. We do need
Oh
men.
yeah, that's
We
not
love
helpful
the
at all.
men.
Exactly. Yeah, that goes back to the piece of like both of them is needed.
Yeah.
It's not one or the other.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with a lot of like super feminine spaces. Like if you're hating on men, you're exactly the same as the patriarchy.
Yeah.
But
No, I agree with
anyways,
you. There is no, like, if
yeah.
you're not
Yeah.
allowing space for the other energy, you're annihilating half of you.
Yeah. Yeah, cuz we all have feminine and masculine
Yeah,
energy
we
and
do.
qualities and characteristics.
Exactly.
And something I was working on saying.
Did I cut you again?
No,
Probably
it's
did. My
all it's
apologies.
all perfect. It's all perfect because I love the way it went here and there and stuff.
Beautiful conversation. I love this
Yeah, I'm
conversation for
loving I'm
sure.
loving this.
Mm.
And so what I was meaning to say was like this kind of like pressure to stay in a box for so long. When you
Mm-hmm.
look back on the 1950s and go back in like recent history, how that kind of like women couldn't even buy a house 100 years ago. But in this conversation I was having, we were talking about how what if this oppression is the biggest gift we could have ever asked for, because we had to, oh, I have goosebumps right now, because we had
You
to
were like,
kind
there's
of
something coming. The drop is going to be huge. Go ahead.
we kind of had to go underground and into secret and form our own underground communities, and not even with each other, with ourselves too. We had to really go within and find, who am I? Where does my power actually come from? It doesn't come from the Supreme Court. It
Mm-mm.
doesn't come from any type of laws written on a piece of paper. It doesn't come from any words. It comes from your body. And if we didn't have all these years of oppression, we wouldn't be in this chapter we're at now, where women are being liberated and freed, and we're figuring out how sacred our yonis are, and just like all of this. Like I feel like a feeling is coming over me, and I'm having a very hard time illustrating the words.
That's okay. Feel it. Feel it all. I feel it as well, and I get you. And at the same time, I'm getting another message. It's like it was definitely a blessing, but let's be honest, we always been doing it underground. Women
Mm,
were like, when the men were out, they were meeting with each other, like the village. They weren't all
yeah.
about like the children. They were like all about like, how can we support each other? And that was the only way they could do it. Of like, I'm going to help so and so. So I could actually get a cup of coffee, or not working with her and doing it with the kids, but we could get a couple of extra words outside of the society and outside other
Mm,
ears and everything. And it's this reason. The thing is, we never lost our power. It's always been there. It's just like it's been covered up by the P. Like it's been covered by the society
yeah.
because of wanting to put people in boxes, as you were saying. And I do feel in Europe it has been even stronger, or like in that level. Like, I'm European, so I'm no better in that sense. The Catholic Church
Mm,
has been the worst thing that could have ever happened in Europe, but at the same time, probably the best blessing, because we
mm,
don't know everything yet.
yeah.
You know, it
Yeah, we
is
don't
just
know
the
where
big
this is
thing about
all
it. It's
leading
just like
to.
it's wanting to rule out everything, because, as you were saying, like, it's not Supreme Court and everything. Like, this level, like Catholic religion, has been all about ruling everything, so you didn't have to think, and keeping you in the box of like, you are a poor sinner
Mm,
until you redempt yourself every single whatever week, and you're keeping yourself small.
yeah.
And I'm like, I got that huge big like slap in the face, and it was weird because that was happening when my grandpa passed away in 2017. um it was the last time I went to church, and I never like really went to church, but like that was like, it never really was religious or anything like that, but it's kind of like the thing you do in this place, and like, in the north of France. And the priest kept saying that we poor sinners, we lost lambs. And I was like that's kind of, now telling you that, it's probably my first very big awakening. I was like, I'm not lost, I'm not a lamb, I'm not poor, I'm like, all of those things. Like, this is it, I'm never putting my foot ever again in a church, this is it. It's just the big thing of like, and again, there is some people that do feel comfort in that. And I'm like, for me, it's like like, as you were saying, you were talking about the soul regression, like the past life regression. When you kind of tapping into your past life regression, you have so much wisdom from those past life, and they were like telling you like, yeah, that's kind of bullshit right now, even though there was no words for that probably 1,000 years ago. But it's just like, this does not add up. And
Hmm.
you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I wonder. But again, I have an amazing client of mine and a friend, because like, my clients are my friends. Let's be like, it's the way I roll. And she is the voice of Jesus. Like when she, like, I told her like, you the only person that mended my heart with God. I can
Oh,
solely now say God. Before I was like, I can't even say that word. It's just like, I can't do this.
yeah.
And will I go to church? not a chance. But her way to describe is the same as us. She just have another way of doing it.
Mm.
It's just like, you're free to think whatever you think. This is my own journey. And it's just like, she's not imposing that on anyone else's. And my journey is my journey, and I never want to impose that on anyone else. I respect every opinion. I respect them. Whatever
Yeah.
you think, it's your thought, it's your process. It's not mine.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the biggest thing in the world, that when we get to that level of I respect either or answer with no judgment, you do you kind of thing, that's a definitely different energetics. And it's just beautiful to be in those kind of rooms, to be honest.
I love it. I love everything that you've brought here. And I
Can we
could
do
keep
that every week?
I know, like I could keep talking to you. I feel like we need to do another recording, but
We'll do it.
towards the end, I like to ask a certain like set of questions.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move
Right.
into that.
Mm-hmm.
The first question is, what does self-love mean to you?
Ooh. Give me a second. Because when I hear self-love, I'm getting a weird answer. So I'm going to share that. It's
Okay.
cute. And what are
Okay.
you saying about that? But I do feel like self-love has been at some level, what's the word? Taking on by the masculine energy. It's like kind of like self-love. It's kind of like a lot of to do with beauty, external beauty.
Mm.
To me, it's like when you like a lot of people like self-care and everything. Oh, I do self-care. I just put my cream on my face, or I go to the spa, which are all amazing, don't deny it. But we kind of forgot that self-love is also inner self-inquiry and be with ourselves in silence. But this world has conditioned us to be doing things, so we cannot be. And we kind of tend of like, and I'm not saying there's something wrong about listening to music. I love listening to music, but there is a lot of things like in the world, in terms of self-love, we're going to be doing the cream and everything, but we're going to have a podcast, music, we're going to have Netflix, whatever. We are numbing the most important, intimate part of us, which is the discovery of us. So it's a long answer about self-love, but it's just self-love. The whole holistic way of self-love is actually booking yourself in the calendar and not being available to anyone but yourself. That's the real deep self-love. With no phone or phone, like you removing the apps that will lead you to go and do something else. It's just being your phone, put your voice note if you want to talk, that's fine. Connect with friends if you want, that's fine. But you need to be with yourself, and you need to be uncomfortable being with by yourself. Because after that, this is deep self-love, lady. And you know that, being with yourself is the best date you could ever have.
Yeah.
Even though I love my
Yeah.
partner, it's the best date.
Yeah.
It's the fulfilling
Yeah.
of the cup. Yeah, for sure.
So true. I love that answer.
I hope, like, I don't know what I said, but it needs to be written and it needs to be on Instagram.
I'll clip it and send it to
Oh,
you.
thank you. Oh, yes,
Yeah.
that'd be amazing. I tag you then.
Yeah. I'll send it to you on like a Google Drive or something.
Yeah, great.
Next question is just finishing the phrase, the way to my heart is
Love. Deep, unconditional love.
And then what makes you feel the most grounded?
Connecting with Gaia.
Mm,
Stargazing is my fave.
love it.
It's just like feeling your feet connecting with the earth and feeling like energetic roots going through the earth. Is just you cannot even grasp that. It is like when you haven't really started your awakening, you cannot even realize this is possible. But when you get there, you're like, this is weird and
Yeah.
good at the same time.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think the earth is a living being. She's
It's
alive.
mother. It's the mother.
Yeah.
She's the creation of all.
Yeah.
Without the earth, we would not be here right now.
Exactly.
So she's the mother.
That could be a whole conversation.
That's going to be very theoretical though. But yeah. Theo Theological, is it the word? Like very kind of out there.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah. I'm here for any kind of those kind of conversation anyway.
Yeah, same. And then what is your favorite part about being a woman?
Mm. I heard Mayoni, that's why I'm going to say that. Like the reception part and also the leading movement that's happening in the world.
Mm,
And not the feminist way, is
mm-hmm,
the future is female. But future is female is like the sexual power of women is rising. So we
mm,
can actually own the place that we are always been designed to have
mm-hmm,
in the most nurturing, loving, and caring way, which is going to shift the world entirely differently.
mm,
If it's led by a woman, the world would be definitely different. It's not
mm.
not even a question, unless she's wounded and she leads from the masculine.
What's interesting about that is like when a baby is born, their leader is mom. Like
Mm-hmm.
you have kids, I don't have kids
Yeah.
yet, but I've done a lot of babysitting and I used to work in a daycare. And when dad is there, it's like, yeah, okay, but like most babies, they want mom.
Oh
Mom
yeah,
is,
I have three.
we're all, yeah, yeah.
Sometimes I go to
I bet
dad.
that's tiring.
Yeah, yeah. She's like, Mom. It's like, oh, no. Cannot grab this word. I want to change this word. I don't want this word anymore in my life. But yeah, it's just I love my kids. It's just like sometimes the moms can be said 5 times in less than a minute, so it's a lot.
Oh, I
But
bet.
yeah, I get you, and it's a
I
beautiful
bet.
analogy. You're
Yeah.
right.
Gosh. I'll be where you're at in a few years. My husband and I are talking about
It's going to be
getting pregnant
exciting.
soon. Every day I see him, actually, I'm like, you want to make a baby?
Yeah, my partner cannot look at me this straight anymore when I say that. Because I was joking with this for years, and now that we have babies, like, no. So we don't use that word anymore. It's just like,
Yeah.
no, and I don't want to make any more babies. I honor your journey of becoming a mother. I always wanted to be a mother, so I am super, super grateful for that. Yet I'm done. My baby
Yeah.
machine is closed, and I'm like, nah, it's
Yeah.
finished. I've done the work. I
Yeah.
had twins
Yeah.
as well, so that probably had an extra level of like, I am done. I don't
Yeah. I
send the
bet.
triplets after that. And yeah, it's just the whole nappy, cry, sleepless nights, and everything, which are actually beautiful when you go, like, it's not beautiful when you go through it. It's kind of bittersweet when you're out of it, but I'm
Uh,
done. I don't want to
yeah.
do that again. But it's
Yeah.
just, and like, I honor all of those. Like, I have friends that have like 4 or 5 children, and I'm like, fair play. I could be pregnant again. Having another child, probably not, but I could be pregnant again. That's fine. I love the belly and all. Not the other part. Like, it's not that. And I sound very harsh when I say that. I'm just like, I'm so excited for you to go through this because my story doesn't have to be yours. And I talked about my podcast, but I interviewed a podcast guest that did a full free birth.
I've heard of that. Wow.
And when she told me that, I was like, I was not ready when I had my children, but
Yeah.
now I'm like, I would never go again. It's just like thinking of like meeting that level of knowledge without having children
Yeah.
that might have changed my course. Again,
Uh,
I don't want to change it,
yeah.
but that might have changed my course, that I could actually course. I might have tried this way.
Yeah.
And like a baby who's getting bored and the days want to be born and not because it's 3 days late or whatever. And
Mm.
mine was
Gosh.
12 days.
That could be
It-
a whole conversation too.
yeah.
And
But
like
yeah,
for
if you
for
want
me
to link
the
with her, I'd send her details, but she is amazing
okay.
in that. And she's like such a powerful goddess.
Yeah.
around this subject. She's like such a beautiful woman on that.
Ooh,
And I'm so excited for just for people to be aware. I'm not saying you should do this. It's
yeah.
just being aware that you all the options because we don't tell you all the options.
Yeah.
It's like at hospital, normal birth, or C-section. No, you actually have at home. You also have free birth. You also have another way. And it's just like, now that you say
Yeah.
this, and not everyone is ready for it. And that's just part of the journey of being human as well. What
Mm-hmm.
you are ready to do is not someone else ready to do. And she gave birth, free birth, first baby. Like, girl,
That's
that's a new
amazing.
level of trust,
Yeah. Wow.
new level of trust.
Wow. I want to connect with her because I'm
Yeah.
definitely interested in the alternative methods like being at home.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yet there are definitely some limiting beliefs I have because I'm 32 and I know I'm not going to have a kid, before I turn 33 because my birthday is in less than 3 months. And
We never
there's this
know.
like,
Immaculate conception.
yeah,
I'm kidding.
maybe, but there's this like narrative from society of like that I'm like old, you know.
Well, she is the same age as you.
Okay. Awesome. And
Mm.
then another piece is like my husband is like, what if something happens? Like, what if you need a doctor? Like, what if the cord is
Well,
wrapped
you're
around
not
you?
in the wilderness where it's the hospital is 3 hours away, I suppose.
Yeah, no, we're not.
So if anything happens, you're just a phone call away from going to the hospital and being sorted. The thing is, my friend, because again, it's just a client but also a friend. What she said, like you go through intensive courses. Like she did a course around free birth, and like there
Mm.
is important cues and everything that are very highlighted of like those are the cues that you need to go to the
Mm.
hospital.
Ooh.
Like there is like a level
Yeah.
of trust, but there is also safety.
It's
And I'm
crazy
getting
how much
goosebumps on my
knowledge
legs
there
saying
is
that to
with,
you,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it's just, again, I'm like, now, I'm like, I would never go pregnant again. It's not like, oh, maybe she will. I won't. The baby machine is definitely closed. It's just like physically closed. But if I had to know the baby, I would go that route.
Yeah.
No hospital appointment, no whatever, just trust the whole process.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a lot, a deep level of surrendering because it's just like, is the baby breathing? Is the heartbeat strong? And all of this and all of that. And it's just like, at the end of the day, it's just like you cannot change anything in your room.
Yeah.
And it's hard even to say that because I'm like, some women have like horrific experience and horrific stories, and I want to honor all of them, all of the women that listen to us for an hour and a half. But but yeah, it's the thing. It's just like I'm not saying it's for everyone, but why not? Why
Yeah.
not? Why not for you? I mean, in the sense of like asking yourself, is it something for you? And you could be like, hell no, and it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah.
know, it's all totally fine. Whatever it is, rock your boat.
Mm-hmm.
You know. Anyway, let me
So
have a
for the
refreshing.
people who are here listening, where can they find you online? How can they find out more about your work? And if there's any like offering or anything that you're feeling called to share in this moment, I want to give you space
Sure.
for that.
So you can normally mostly find me on Instagram, even though I'm
Oh, what happened? Oh
doing of the
no,
podcast.
you cut out
Um,
for a second.
Oh, yes, it's what I thought. I see my like I was saying you can mostly find me on Instagram and I'm under Divinely Lucie on Instagram. And also, if you like this kind of thought, I would love to invite you to my podcast and go into that kind of deep level of conversation because it's something that are very juicy and message from me. And most of my, like not most, all of my message are channels, because as I was saying during the conversation, I'm a psychic. So if you really wanted to kind of deeper into your own soul and your own discovery, I would definitely invite you to explore the transmission, which is a one-on-one call, 2 hours with me, and a couple of extra days over Voxer or Marco Polo, doesn't really matter, and where we go deep into your soul and kind of like connect you to your higher timeline, which is such a beautiful, beautiful thing to do. I love doing that.
Amazing. So the links to find Lucie will be in the show notes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank
This
you.
is
Thank
beautiful.
you. It's amazing. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Openly Spoken. I know that there's an abundance of content online, so I really appreciate you giving me your ears today. If this episode shifted something for you, please share this with a friend and/or write us a podcast review if you're listening to this on iTunes so that more people can find this. If anything shifted for you from this episode that you want to have a conversation about, I would love to hear from you. Just send me a DM over on Instagram at selfexpressedbabe, and that is in the show notes. Thanks again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.